The diner went silent when the Mafia boss's deaf son walked in. Everyone looked away, everyone except her. The shy waitress walked up and signed, "Hello." The little boy's face lit up for the first time in months, and he hugged her like she was his whole world. Then his father, city's most feared man, walked in and said, "You're coming with us tonight." Emma's hands trembled as she balanced 3 plates of meatloaf special up her left arm. The Tuesday dinner rush at Sal's diner was brutal, but she'd learned to disappear into the chaos. Invisible. That's how she liked it. Table 7 needs ketchup. Diane barked from behind the counter, her voice cutting through the clatter of dishes. Emma nodded, keeping her eyes down. She'd worked at Sal's for 2 years, and most customers couldn't pick her out of a lineup. That suited her just fine. The less attention, the better. But today was different. The whisper started around 5 p.m. when the black SUVs pulled up outside. Emma was refilling salt shakers when she noticed the entire staff had gone rigid. Sal himself, a man who never left his kitchen, stood at the window, his face pale. "Don't look," her co-worker Marcus hissed, grabbing her elbow. "And whatever you do, don't go near booth 12. Emma's curiosity sparked despite herself.
"Why?"
"Who is it?" Marcus pulled her toward the kitchen, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "The Russo kid. Adrian Russo's son." The name meant nothing to Emma. She'd only moved to Chicago 6 months ago, still drowning in bills and avoiding her landlord's calls. She didn't follow local news or gossip. "So?" she asked. Marcus stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "So? Adrian Russo basically owns half the city." "Look, just stay in the back. Diane will handle that table." But when Emma peeked through the kitchen window, she saw something that made her chest tighten. Booth 12 held only one person, a boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, sitting completely alone. His dark hair was neatly combed, his clothes expensive, but his small shoulders were hunched forward. He stared at the table, fingers tracing patterns on the worn vinyl. No menu, no water, no one even approaching him. The other customers kept their distance, shooting nervous glances at the booth. Even Diane, who'd served everyone from truckers to politicians, stood frozen behind the counter, wringing her dish towel. Emma watched the boy for a full minute. He didn't look up once, didn't move except for those fingers, drawing invisible shapes over and over. Something in her chest cracked. "I'll take it," she said quietly. "Emma, no," Marcus started. But she was already pushing through the kitchen door, grabbing a kid's menu and a glass of chocolate milk. Her heart hammered, but her feet kept moving. She'd been invisible for so long that maybe, just this once, she could do something that mattered. The diner seemed to hold its breath as she approached booth 12. The boy didn't look up, even when she stopped beside him. Up close, she could see how carefully someone had dressed him, pressed shirt, clean sneakers, but his eyes were distant, locked somewhere she couldn't reach. "Hi there," Emma said softly, setting down the chocolate milk. Nothing. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. She crouched down to his eye level, trying to catch his attention. That's when she noticed it, the way his eyes tracked movement but never quite focused on faces. The slight tilt of his head, as if straining to hear something just out of reach. Emma's mind flashed back to her younger brother, Jeremy. The same distant look. The same isolation. Without thinking, her hands moved into the patterns she'd learned years ago, studying at night while working double shifts to help pay for Jeremy's therapy. She signed, "Hello. My name is Emma." The boy's head snapped up so fast it startled her. His dark eyes, sharp and suddenly alert, locked onto her hands. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then slowly his small hands lifted.
"You."
No signs. Emma's heart nearly burst.
"Yes."
"Are you hungry?" His fingers trembled as he signed back, slower than she'd expected, like he was rusty or hadn't practiced much. "No one talks to me." The weight of those words hit Emma like a punch. She glanced around the diner, at the staff cowering in corners, at customers deliberately turning away. This boy was surrounded by people, yet completely alone. "I'm talking to you now," she signed, then smiled. "What's your name?"
Luca.
"Nice to meet you, Luca. Do you like grilled cheese?" For the first time, his expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something close. Something human. He nodded. Emma stood, still facing him so he could see her hands. "I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere." Luca's response froze her in place. "I never go anywhere." She was halfway to the kitchen when she felt the weight of everyone's stares. Sal caught her arm at the door. "What the hell are you doing?" he whispered harshly. "Do you know who that kid is?" "A little boy who's hungry," Emma said, pulling free. "I'm making him a grilled cheese." "Emma, it's just a sandwich, Sal." But as she worked at the grill, her hands shaking slightly as she buttered the bread, she knew it wasn't just a sandwich. Something had shifted. That boy, Luca, had looked at her like she was a lifeline. Like she was the first person in a very long time who'd actually seen him. When she brought the plate back, Luca's eyes lit up. She set it down and signed, "Extra cheese. The best." He picked up the sandwich carefully, taking a small bite. Then another. Emma turned to leave, give him space, but his hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. She looked down at him, surprised by the strength in his grip. Luca's eyes were wide, almost desperate. Then he did something that made the entire diner gasp. He stood up on the vinyl seat and wrapped his arms around her neck, hugging her tightly. Emma stood frozen, this small boy clinging to her like she was the only solid thing in his world. She felt his shoulders shake slightly, felt the way his hands gripped her uniform. "Oh, sweetie," she whispered, her own voice cracking. She hugged him back carefully. "It's okay." That's when the front door exploded open. The man who entered didn't walk, he commanded space. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples and eyes like cold steel. Two men in dark suits flanked him, hands resting inside their jackets. The diner went absolutely silent. The man's gaze swept the room and landed on booth 12. On his son. On Emma. His expression was unreadable, but Emma felt the temperature drop 20 degrees. "Luca," the man said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. The boy didn't let go. If anything, he held on tighter. Emma's survival instinct screamed at her to step back, apologize, run. But Luca was shaking now, and she wouldn't, push him away. The man took 3 steps forward. Up close, Emma could see the sharp cut of his jaw, the expensive watch, the barely contained violence in his posture. This was someone used to getting exactly what he wanted. "Luca," he repeated. The boy finally pulled back, but his hand found Emma's and gripped it tight. The man's eyes dropped to their joined hands. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe, or shock. One of the suited men leaned in and whispered urgently, "Boss, he's never." The doctor said he wouldn't respond to anyone. He's been completely withdrawn for months. The man, Adrian Russo, Emma's brain finally caught up, stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "What did you do?" he asked, and Emma couldn't tell if it was a threat or genuine curiosity. Emma's voice came out scratchy. She cleared her throat. "I just said hello." "He's deaf," Adrian said flatly. "He doesn't." Emma's hands moved before she could stop them, signing to Luca. "Are you okay?" Luca nodded and signed back. "Don't let me go." Adrian Russo's eyes widened. Emma watched realization crash over his face. This stranger, this nobody waitress, was communicating with his son, doing what dozens of expensive specialists apparently couldn't. The silence stretched impossibly long. Then Adrian spoke, his voice carrying an edge that made Emma's stomach drop. "You're coming with us. Tonight." "Excuse me?" Emma's voice came out higher than intended. Adrian Russo didn't repeat himself. He simply looked at her like the matter was already settled. "My car is outside. You'll ride with us." Emma's grip on Luca's hand tightened instinctively. "I'm working. I can't just. Sal, Adrian called out, not even turning his head. The diner owner appeared instantly, practically materializing from the kitchen. Yes, Mr. Russo? How much does she make in a month? Sal's eyes darted to Emma, apologetic. About 1,800, sir. Plus tips. Adrian pulled out his wallet, counted out several bills, and placed them on the counter, without looking. That's 6 months. She's done here. Wait. Emma stepped forward, anger cutting through her fear. You can't just, I need this job. I have rent bills. Which will be handled. Adrian's tone didn't change. Clinical. Final. He looked at her properly for the first time, and Emma felt pinned by that gaze. My son hasn't responded to anyone in 8 months. Not doctors, not therapists, not family. You walk up and within 5 minutes, Adrian's jaw tightened. He's hugging you. Emma glanced down at Luca, who was watching their exchange with wide, anxious eyes. His hand was still locked around hers, pulse rapid against her palm. I understand this is unusual, Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. But you can't kidnap people just because. I'm not kidnapping you. Adrian's expression hardened. I'm offering you a position. As my son's companion. His tutor. Whatever he needs. I'm a waitress, not a teacher. You speak his language. Adrian moved closer, and Emma forced herself not to step back. Do you have any idea how many specialists I've hired? How much money I've spent trying to reach him? His voice dropped, and for just a moment, Emma saw something raw underneath the cold exterior. You did in 5 minutes what they couldn't do in 8 months. One of the suited men cleared his throat. Boss, we should go. Being out in the open like this. Adrian silenced him with a look. Then he focused back on Emma. Name your price. Emma's mind raced. This was insane. Going home with a man everyone was terrified of, into a world she knew nothing about. But Luca's fingers squeezed hers, and when she looked down, he was signing desperately. Please, don't leave. Her heart cracked. She thought of Jeremy, how isolated he'd been before someone finally took the time to understand him. How different his life might have been if that someone had come sooner. I want to help him, Emma said quietly. But I'm not. I don't belong in your world, Mr. Russo. It's not about belonging. It's about my son. Adrian's voice was granite. 1 month. Trial period. You'll stay at my home, teach Luca, help him communicate. If it works, we discuss long-term arrangements. If not, you walk away with enough money to start fresh somewhere else. Emma looked at Luca again. The hope in his eyes was devastating. Okay, she whispered. 1 month. The SUV was bigger than Emma's entire apartment. Leather seats, tinted windows, and a silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Luca sat pressed against her side, his small hand still gripping hers like a lifeline. Adrian sat across from them, typing on his phone with controlled precision. The 2 suited men, who Emma now understood were bodyguards, occupied the front seats. We'll stop by your apartment, Adrian said without looking up. Get whatever you need. How do you know where I live? Now he did look up, one eyebrow raised slightly. Miss Hayes, I know everything about everyone who enters my son's life. Emma Catherine Hayes, age 24, moved to Chicago 6 months ago from Indianapolis. Currently 3 months behind on rent, working 2 jobs, no criminal record. He paused. Your brother Jeremy is deaf. That's why you know sign language. Emma's blood ran cold. You investigated me? In the last 10 minutes. I protect what's mine. Adrian's gaze shifted to Luca. Always. The apartment stop was humiliating. Emma's building was in the worst part of town, graffiti on the walls, the elevator perpetually broken. She ran up 4 flights of stairs while the bodyguards waited by the SUV, shoving clothes into a duffel bag with shaking hands. A note was taped to her door. Final notice. Eviction hearing Friday. She crumpled it and shoved it in her pocket. Adrian Russo's mansion wasn't just big, it was obscene. Iron gates, manicured lawns, a driveway longer than her street back home. Emma clutched her pathetic duffel bag as they entered through doors that looked like they belonged in a museum. The foyer alone was bigger than Sal's diner. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. A woman in a gray dress appeared, her face stern. "Mr. Russo, we weren't expecting." "This is Emma Hayes." Adrian's hand landed on Luca's shoulder. "She'll be staying in the East Wing. Guest suite. Make sure she has everything she needs." The woman's eyes traveled over Emma's stained uniform and discount sneakers. "Of course, sir." 3 men in expensive suits emerged from a side room, their conversation dying when they saw Adrian. One of them, older, with sharp features and cold eyes, smiled thinly.
Adrian.
"Who's this?" "Emma, my brother Vincent." Adrian's tone carried a warning. "Vincent, this is Luca's new companion." Vincent's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A companion?"
How?
Quaint, he looked Emma up and down like she was something stuck to his shoe. "Does she have credentials? Experience with special needs children?" "She has something better." Adrian's voice could have cut glass. "My son trusts her." "A waitress as the heir's tutor?" Another man snorted. "That's ridiculous." The room fell silent. Emma felt the weight of their judgment, saw the sneers barely hidden behind professional masks. She was drowning, completely out of her depth. Adrian's voice, when he spoke, made everyone freeze. "My son has chosen. That makes her his guardian while she's under this roof. Anyone who has a problem with that can find new employment." No one spoke. Luca tugged Emma's hand, signing. "They're always mean. Don't listen." Emma looked down at his small, serious face and made a decision. She was terrified, overwhelmed, and completely out of place. But this little boy needed someone on his side. She knelt down, meeting Luca at eye level, and signed back, "I'm not going anywhere." For the second time that night, Luca smiled. Behind them, Vincent Russo's expression darkened. Emma's guest suite had more square footage than her entire apartment building. A 4-poster bed dominated the room, draped in silk that probably cost more than her car. The bathroom had heated floors. Heated floors. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her uniform, and tried not to cry. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. She opened the door to find Luca holding a stuffed bear that looked older than he was, its fur worn smooth from years of handling. "You looked sad," he signed, offering the bear. Emma's throat tightened. She took it carefully, signing back. "Thank you. What's his name?" "Bruno. He helps when I'm scared." "Are you scared now?" Luca hesitated, then nodded. "Uncle Vincent doesn't like you. He doesn't like anyone Dad brings home." Before Emma could respond, Adrian appeared in the hallway, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "Luca, it's past your bedtime." Luca's shoulders slumped, but he signed to Emma. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" "I promise." Emma signed back. After Adrian led Luca away, Emma changed into her only pair of clean pajamas, faded cotton with a hole in the sleeve, and tried to sleep in a bed that felt like a cloud. Every sound made her jump. The house creaked and settled like a living thing, and somewhere below, she heard voices arguing. She was dozing when her door opened. Emma shot upright, heart hammering. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. "Relax." Adrian's voice cut through the dark. "It's just me." "Just you?" Emma fumbled for the lamp, flooding the room with light. Adrian stood in the doorway in jeans and a black t-shirt, looking more human and somehow more dangerous. "Do you always walk into women's bedrooms unannounced?" "I wanted to talk." Away from prying eyes, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "My men are concerned." "Your men hate me. They don't trust easily." Adrian moved to the window, looking out over the grounds. "Neither do I." "But Luca," he trailed off, jaw working. "My son hasn't spoken in 8 months. Hasn't communicated with anyone. The doctors said he'd retreated so far inside himself that we might never reach him." Emma pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "What happened?" 8 months ago." Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. His mother died. Car accident. He was in the vehicle, trapped for an hour before rescue arrived. He couldn't hear the sirens, couldn't hear her. Adrian's hand curled into a fist against the window frame. He's been silent ever since. Not just quiet, gone. I'm sorry, Emma whispered. Don't be sorry. Just help him. Adrian turned, and the raw desperation in his eyes shocked her. I've failed him in every way that matters. I gave him things, safety, money, everything except what he actually needed. Someone who could reach him. Mr. Russo. Adrian. Adrian. Emma corrected carefully. I'm not a miracle worker. I just know sign language because of my brother. That doesn't make me qualified to. You made my son smile. Adrian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. That makes you the most qualified person I've ever met. Morning came with another knock. This time it was the stern woman from last night, Mrs. Chun, the head of household staff. Breakfast is at 7 sharp, she said crisply. Mr. Russo expects you downstairs. Appropriate clothing has been provided. Appropriate. Emma looked at the closet Mrs. Chun indicated. Inside hung a dozen outfits, casual but clearly expensive. The kind of clothes Emma had only seen in store windows. Each piece still had tags attached. She fingered a soft blue sweater that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. She chose the simplest option, dark jeans and a cream blouse, and headed downstairs. The dining room could seat 20. Adrian sat at the head of a massive table, reading the newspaper. Luca was beside him, pushing scrambled eggs around his plate with mechanical precision. Vincent Russo lounged across from them, coffee in hand. The waitress joins us. Vincent's smile was sharp. Tell me, Emma, what exactly are your qualifications? Besides knowing a few hand signals. Vincent, Adrian warned. It's a legitimate question, brother. You've brought a stranger into our home, given her access to Luca, and we know nothing about her. Vincent's eyes glittered with something cruel. For all we know, she could be working for the Morettas. Or the feds. Emma's stomach dropped, but before she could defend herself, Adrian's fist slammed on the table hard enough to rattle the china. Enough, the single word carried absolute authority. Emma is here because Luca needs her. That's the only qualification that matters. You're letting a child make decisions for this family? Vincent leaned forward. That's not how leadership works, Adrian. Father would be. Father is dead. Adrian's voice went cold. I lead this family now. And I've decided Emma stays. Vincent's expression darkened, but he said nothing more. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Emma sat beside Luca, who immediately brightened. He signed. Did you sleep okay?
Yes.
Did you? He shrugged. Bad dreams. But Bruno helped. As they ate, Emma felt eyes on her constantly. Staff members watched from doorways. Vincent stared over his coffee cup like she was a bug under a microscope. Even Adrian observed her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. After breakfast, Vincent cornered her in the hallway. A word of advice, he said quietly, his smile gone. Whatever game you're playing, whatever angle you're working, I'll find it. And when I do, you'll wish you'd never set foot in that diner. Emma forced herself to meet his gaze. I'm not playing any game. I'm here for Luca. Nobody is here just for anything in this world. Vincent leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Everyone wants something. Money, power, protection. So, what is it you want, Emma Hayes? I want your nephew to not feel alone. Emma stepped back. That's it. Vincent laughed, sharp and humorless. How refreshingly naive. Let's see how long that innocence lasts. He walked away, leaving Emma shaking in the marble hallway, wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Behind her, Luca appeared, slipping his small hand into hers. Don't let Uncle scare you, he signed. He scares everyone, even you. Luca's hesitation was answer enough. 3 days into living at the Russo mansion, Emma developed a routine. Mornings with Luca in the library, teaching him not just sign language, but how to express himself. Afternoons in the garden where he seemed most relaxed. Evenings reading together before Adrian came to tuck him in. It was almost normal, almost peaceful. Until the fourth morning, when she found Adrian waiting in her room. "We need to talk." He held a manila folder, his expression unreadable. Emma's heart sank.
She'd known this was coming.
About. Adrian opened the folder, spreading papers across her pristine bedspread. Eviction notices. Credit card statements with angry red balances. A letter from a collection agency. Even the crumpled final notice she'd thrown away at her apartment. "How did you?" Emma's face burned with humiliation. "I told you. I protect what's mine. That includes investigating threats." Adrian's finger tapped a particularly nasty letter from her landlord, full of threats about legal action and ruined credit. "This man, Frank Morrison. He's been harassing you for months." "That's none of your business." Emma snatched the papers, trying to shove them back in the folder. Her hands shook with anger and shame. "It became my business when you entered my home." Adrian caught her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop her. "You're drowning in debt. 3 months behind on rent, maxed out credit cards. Your car was repossessed last month." "Stop." Emma jerked free, tears stinging her eyes. "Just stop, okay? I know I'm a mess. I know I'm poor and pathetic and barely keeping my head above water. You don't need to list every way I'm failing." Adrian's expression didn't change. "That's not what I'm doing." "Then what are you doing?" "Reminding me that you hold all the power here? That I'm completely dependent on you now." Emma's voice cracked. "I didn't ask to be rescued. I didn't ask for any of this." "No," Adrian said quietly. "You asked to help my son. Nothing more." He picked up one of the letters, the one from her landlord threatening to make her regret missing payments. "But these problems don't disappear just because you're here. Morrison filed a lawsuit yesterday. He's claiming you destroyed property and stole from him." Emma's legs went weak. She sat heavily on the bed. "That's a lie. I never." "I know." Adrian pulled out his phone, showing her a series of photographs. Her apartment, clearly documented before she'd moved in. Water damage, broken fixtures, mold in the bathroom. "My men took these yesterday. Morrison's been running a slum and blaming tenants for his negligence. You're not his first victim. Why do you care?" Emma looked up at him, exhausted. "Why go through all this trouble for someone like me?" Adrian was silent for a moment, studying her with those cold gray eyes. Then he did something that shocked her. He sat down on the bed beside her, the most casual gesture she'd seen from him. "When Luca's mother died, I hired the best therapists money could buy. Specialists from Switzerland, Japan, experts who'd written books on childhood trauma." His jaw tightened. "None of them could reach him. They'd show up with their degrees and their expensive methods, and Luca would sit there, staring at nothing, dead inside." Emma stayed quiet, sensing he needed to say this. "Then you walk into a diner, no credentials, no reputation, just—" Adrian gestured vaguely. "You see him. Actually see him. Not as a problem to solve or a paycheck to collect. Just a scared kid who needed someone to say hello." He looked at her directly. "That's why I care. Because you gave me my son back." Emma felt her throat tighten. "I didn't ask for your pity."
Good.
"Because I'm not offering it." Adrian stood, collecting the papers. "I'm offering to handle these problems so you can focus on what matters. Morrison will drop the lawsuit and leave you alone. Your debts will be cleared. Consider it part of your compensation. I don't want your money fixing my life." "Too bad." Adrian moved toward the door, then paused. "Emma, pride is expensive. I should know. It's cost me nearly everything. But right now, my son needs you focused, not worried about lawsuits and eviction notices. So swallow that pride and let me handle this." "Why does it feel like I'm selling my soul?" Adrian's laugh was harsh and unexpected. "If you were selling your soul, you'd know it. This is just practical." After he left, Emma sat alone with her thoughts. She'd spent 6 months in Chicago running from her problems in Indianapolis, her brother's medical debt, their mother's death, the weight of being responsible for everything at 24. She'd thought a fresh start meant doing it all alone, proving she didn't need anyone. But sitting in this enormous mansion, surrounded by luxuries she'd never dreamed of, Emma felt more trapped than ever. The gilded cage was still a cage. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Luca peeked in, Bruno the bear tucked under his arm. "Are you crying?" he signed. "No," Emma lied, wiping her eyes quickly. Luca came closer, studying her face with the unsettling perception of children who'd seen too much. "Dad makes people cry sometimes. He doesn't mean to. He just doesn't know how to be soft." Emma pulled Luca into a hug, breathing in his little boy smell of soap and grass. "I'm okay. Promise. Can we go to the garden? The roses are blooming."
Yes.
"Let's go." As they walked through the mansion hand in hand, Emma caught sight of Vincent watching from a window above. His expression was calculating, predatory. She thought about Adrian's words, "I protect what's mine." But what happened when you became something someone like Adrian Russo considered his? What did that cost? Emma squeezed Luca's hand tighter and tried not to think about the answer. 2 weeks passed in strange harmony. Emma fell into the rhythm of the mansion, teaching Luca in the mornings, exploring the grounds in the afternoons, avoiding Vincent whenever possible. Adrian remained distant but present, watching their progress with an intensity that made Emma nervous. She was teaching Luca about emotions in the library when everything changed. They sat on the floor surrounded by flashcards Emma had made, each showing a different feeling. Luca was getting good at identifying them, his vocabulary expanding daily. "This one." Emma held up a card showing a worried face. "Scared," Luca signed, but his hands trembled. "Close." "This is worried, scared is different." Emma demonstrated the sign for fear, fingers spreading from her chest. "Can you show me scared?" Luca's hands froze. His eyes darted to the library doors, then back to Emma. When he signed, his movements were jerky, uncertain. "I'm scared a lot." Emma's heart clenched. "Of what?" Luca shook his head violently, hands dropping to his lap. He wouldn't look at her. "Luca, it's okay. You can tell me anything." "No," his signing was emphatic. "Can't tell." Emma moved closer, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. "Why can't you tell?" Tears welled in Luca's eyes. His small hands shook as he signed. "He said bad things happen if I tell. He said Dad would send me away." Ice flooded Emma's veins. "Who said that?" Luca's breath hitched. He looked at the door again, then back to Emma. His next signs were so small she almost missed them. "Uncle Vincent." Emma felt like she'd been punched. She kept her face calm, even as rage built in her chest. "What did he say exactly?"
Don't tell Dad.
"Uncle scares me." Luca's tears spilled over. "After Mom died, Uncle came to my room at night. He said I was weak. Said Dad was disappointed in me. Said if I didn't get better, Dad would send me to a hospital and forget about me." Emma pulled Luca into her arms, feeling him shake against her. Her mind raced. Vincent had been systematically terrorizing this child, isolating him, making him too afraid to reach out even to his own father. "Listen to me," she signed fiercely when Luca pulled back.
Your onkel lied.
"Your dad loves you more than anything. He would never send you away." "But Uncle said." "Uncle Vincent is wrong." Emma wiped his tears gently. "Has he been mean to you recently?" "Since I got here." Luca nodded slowly. 2 days ago, when you were in town with Dad, Uncle came to my room. He said you were going to leave soon. That everyone leaves. That I shouldn't get attached to you." Emma's hands clenched into fists. She forced them to relax before signing. "I'm not leaving. And we're going to tell your dad about this." "No." Luca's panic was immediate.
Please.
"Uncle said if I told, he'd make sure Dad sent you away. He said he could make Dad fire you, make you go back to being poor. Please don't tell." The library door opened. Emma's heart stopped, but it was only Mrs. Chun with afternoon tea. "Everything all right?" The older woman's eyes were sharp, taking in Luca's tears. "Fine," Emma managed. "Just some difficult emotions in our lesson." After Mrs. Chun left, Emma turned back to Luca. We have to tell your dad. This isn't okay. Promise you won't leave? Luca's eyes were desperate. Promise. I promise. Emma signed it clearly, firmly. Nothing your uncle says or does will make me leave you. Luca threw his arms around her neck again, and Emma held him, mind churning. Vincent wasn't just suspicious of her. He'd been actively sabotaging Luca's recovery, keeping the boy isolated and afraid.
Why?
To maintain control? To keep Adrian focused on family drama instead of business. That evening, Emma waited until Luca was asleep before finding Adrian in his study. He sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents with a focused intensity she'd come to recognize. We need to talk, Emma said from the doorway. About Vincent. Adrian looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. Close the door. Emma did, suddenly aware of how isolated they were. How much power Adrian held. But Luca needed her to be brave. Your brother has been threatening Luca. For months, apparently. Telling him he's weak, that you're disappointed in him, that you'll send him away. Adrian went very still. Explain. Emma recounted everything Luca had told her, watching Adrian's expression darken with each word. By the end, his knuckles were white where he gripped the desk. That son of a... Adrian cut himself off, breathing hard. Vincent did this? My own brother? Luca's terrified. He thinks Vincent will hurt me if he finds out we talked to you. Adrian stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Vincent's been my consigliera for 15 years. My right hand. After my wife died, he handled everything while he trailed off, jaw working. I was so lost in my grief, I didn't see what was happening to my own son. It's not too late, Emma said quietly. Isn't it? Adrian turned, and the vulnerability in his expression shocked her. My brother has been poisoning my relationship with Luca for months, making my son afraid of me, and I was too blind to notice. You notice now. That's what matters. Adrian studied her for a long moment. He threatened you too. Vincent won't like that you know his secret. I don't care what Vincent likes. You should. Adrian moved closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming. Vincent is dangerous, Emma. More dangerous than you realize. If he thinks you're a threat to his position, to his influence, then what? He'll make me disappear? Emma stood her ground. I'm not leaving Luca to deal with him alone. Something shifted in Adrian's eyes. Respect, maybe, or concern. You don't know what you're up against. Then tell me. Before Adrian could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression went cold. Vincent wants a family meeting. Tomorrow night. Adrian looked at Emma. He's making his move. The family meeting was set for 8 p.m. in Adrian's private office. Emma spent the day with Luca, trying to keep things normal while her stomach twisted with anxiety. Vincent had been conspicuously absent from the mansion all day, which somehow felt more threatening than his usual cold stares. At 7:30, Adrian found her in Luca's room, reading bedtime stories in sign language. He needs to sleep, Adrian said quietly. What happens tonight? He doesn't need to hear it. Emma nodded, tucking Luca in. The boy grabbed her hand, signing, Be careful. Uncle gets mean when he's angry. I'll be fine, Emma promised, hoping it was true. Adrian's office felt smaller with Vincent already inside, leaning against the bookshelf with calculated casualness. Two of Adrian's men stood by the door, Marco and Tony, the ones who'd been at the diner that first night. Vincent's smile was razor-sharp. So glad you could join us. Vincent claims he has concerns about your presence here, Adrian said, settling behind his desk. I told him he could voice them directly. Concerns? Vincent laughed. Brother, I have evidence. He slid a folder across the desk. Adrian opened it, face impassive as he reviewed the contents. Emma's heart hammered. These are phone records, Vincent said smoothly. Our dear Emma has been making calls to Indianapolis. To a cousin named Rachel Hayes, who, interestingly enough, has gambling debts to the Moretti family. Emma's blood ran cold. Rachel. Her cousin had called 3 days ago, desperate, begging for money. Emma had sent what little she had left in her old account, $200 that wouldn't even dent Rachel's problems. You think Emma is feeding information to the Morettas? Adrian's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. I think it's convenient that a waitress, with a cousin indebted to our enemies, suddenly appears in our lives. Vincent's eyes glittered. I think Frank Morrison, her landlord, received a very interesting offer yesterday. $5,000 to keep pressuring Emma, to make her uncomfortable enough to leave. Emma's head snapped up. You paid my landlord to harass me? Vincent's smile widened. I paid him to reveal your character. A truly loyal person would have told Adrian about the continued harassment. But you didn't, did you? You kept secrets. I kept private matters private, Emma shot back. That's not the same as betrayal. Isn't it? Vincent turned to Adrian. She's a liability. Her cousin is compromised, her financial situation makes her vulnerable to bribes, and she's already demonstrated she'll hide things from you. How long before the Morettas offer her real money? Enough to make her forget her attachment to Luca? Adrian's expression was unreadable. Emma felt the room closing in. My cousin's problems are not mine, Emma said, fighting to keep her voice steady. I sent her money because she's family and she was desperate. That doesn't make me a spy. Then explain why Rachel Hayes met with Carlo Moretti's nephew 2 days ago. Vincent pulled out his phone, showing a grainy photograph of Rachel outside a restaurant with a man in an expensive suit. Why your cousin is suddenly paying off her debts with Moretti money. Emma's world tilted. Rachel wouldn't, but even as she thought it, doubt crept in. Rachel had always been reckless, always in trouble. And Emma had mentioned the Russo name during their last call, hadn't she? Just in passing, explaining why she couldn't talk long. I didn't know, Emma whispered. I swear I didn't know she was. Of course you didn't, Vincent said smoothly. That's what makes you the perfect asset. Innocent, naive, completely unaware you're being used, he turned to Adrian. The Morettas are clever. They knew they couldn't get someone directly into our family. So they found someone pure, someone Luca would trust, and they're using her connections to gather intelligence. That's insane. Emma looked at Adrian desperately. I would never. Luca means everything to me. I wouldn't put him in danger. Intentions don't matter, Vincent said coldly. Results do. And the result is that you're a security risk. Adrian finally spoke, his voice quiet. Marco, Tony, leave us. The two men exchanged glances but obeyed, closing the door behind them. Now it was just the three of them. Vincent, you've been my consigliera for 15 years, Adrian said slowly. In that time, have I ever made a decision based on paranoia rather than fact? No, Vincent admitted. Which is why I'm asking you to see reason now. I see reason. Adrian stood, moving around the desk. I see you've had Emma investigated, her landlord bribed, her family connections researched, all without my knowledge or approval. Vincent's confidence flickered. I was protecting you. You were undermining me. Adrian's voice went cold. Everything you've done, every move you've made regarding Emma, has been behind my back.
Why?
Because you're compromised. Vincent's mask cracked, anger bleeding through. A waitress shows up, signs a few words, and suddenly you're making decisions based on emotion. You're not thinking like a leader, Adrian. You're thinking like a desperate father. And you're thinking like someone who doesn't want Luca to get better. The accusation hung in the air. Vincent's face went pale, then red. How dare you? Emma told me what you said to Luca. The threats. The manipulation. Adrian moved closer to his brother. You kept my son afraid and isolated for 8 months. Why, Vincent? To keep me focused on family problems instead of business? To maintain your influence. I was trying to toughen him up. Vincent snarled. That boy is weak, Adrian. Deaf, traumatized, useless to this family. I was trying to make him stronger. Adrian's fist connected with Vincent's jaw so fast Emma barely saw it. Vincent crashed against the bookshelf, books tumbling down around him. Get out, Adrian said quietly. Before I do something we'll both regret. Vincent wiped blood from his lip, his eyes blazing with hatred. You're making a mistake. The Morettas are using her.
Out. Now.
Vincent straightened his jacket, his gaze shifting to Emma. This isn't over, Waitress. When the truth comes out, when your cousin's betrayal costs Adrian everything, remember that I warned him. He left, slamming the door. Emma sagged against the wall, shaking. What if he's right? What if Rachel is? We'll handle it, Adrian said. Emma didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying Vincent's words, the photograph of Rachel with the Moretti associate, the cold calculation in his eyes. By dawn, she'd convinced herself that leaving was the right thing to do, the safe thing for Luca and Adrian both. She was packing her bag when Adrian appeared in her doorway. You're coming with me today, he said flatly. Adrian, after last night, maybe it's better if I'm meeting with the Morettis. Neutral ground. Supervised sit down to discuss territorial disputes. Adrian's jaw was set. You're coming. Emma stared at him. Are you insane? After everything Vincent said. Vincent is paranoid. The Morettis requested this meeting weeks ago, long before you arrived. Adrian stepped into the room. But I want you there. And Luca, you're bringing your son to a Mafia meeting? I'm bringing my son to show the Morettis that I'm done hiding my family away like their weaknesses. Adrian's eyes were hard. After his mother died, I kept Luca locked away, protected, isolated. That didn't save him. It broke him. So now I'm trying something different. This is crazy. Probably, Adrian almost smiled. But if you're really a Moretti plant like Vincent claims, this is where you'll reveal yourself. And if you're not, which I believe, then the Morettis will see that my family is stronger than they thought. 2 hours later, Emma found herself in the back of an SUV with Adrian, Luca, and 4 heavily armed guards. Luca was unusually quiet, dressed in a small suit that made him look even younger. He held Emma's hand in a death grip. Why are we going to see bad men? He signed. Because your dad needs to talk to them. Emma signed back. We'll be safe. I promise. But she wasn't sure she believed it. The meeting was held in a private room at an upscale Italian restaurant, the kind with no prices on the menu and waiters who looked like they could kill you. Emma felt absurdly out of place in the simple dress Adrian's staff had provided, surrounded by men in $1,000 suits. Carlo Moretti sat at the head of the table, flanked by his nephew Dante and 3 other men who radiated controlled violence. Vincent was already there, having arrived earlier with Marco and Tony. Carlo smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You brought your family.
How?
Intimate. Adrian took a seat, gesturing for Emma and Luca to sit beside him. Let's get this done. Carlo's gaze slid to Emma, lingering with obvious amusement. And this must be the famous Waitress. Vincent's told me all about you. Emma's stomach dropped. Vincent smirked from across the table. Emma is Luca's companion, Adrian said neutrally. She's here because I want her here. A pet waitress at a business meeting, Dante Moretti laughed, the sound ugly. What's next, Adrian? Bringing your maid to negotiations? Your gardener? Careful. Adrian's voice went soft and dangerous. Oh, come now. We're all friends here. Carlos spread his hands. I'm just curious about the woman who's become so important to your family. Vincent says she has interesting connections. Emma felt the trap closing. Every eye in the room was on her. My connections are my own business, Emma said, voice steadier than she felt. Even when your cousin is paying off gambling debts with my nephew's money? Carlo's smile widened. Rachel, isn't it? Sweet girl. Very chatty when she's had a few drinks. Emma's blood turned to ice. So it was true. Rachel had taken Moretti money. What Rachel does doesn't concern me, Emma said. Doesn't it? Carlo leaned forward. She's told us some interesting things. About this household. About Adrian's vulnerabilities. Beside her, Luca had gone very still. His small hands moved in his lap, signing. Emma realized. She glanced down, careful to keep her expression neutral. Luca's signs were tiny, meant only for her. The scary man is lying. I can tell. His friend keeps looking at the door like he's waiting for something bad. Emma's heart raced. She looked at Dante Moretti. supposedly focused on the conversation, but his eyes did keep flicking toward the entrance. And Carlo's performance felt too rehearsed, too confident. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a setup. What exactly did my cousin tell you? Emma asked, buying time while her mind raced. That Adrian Russo has gotten soft, Carlo's voice was poisonous. That he's making decisions based on a deaf child and a girl from nowhere. That maybe it's time for new leadership in Chicago. This meeting is over, Adrian said, starting to rise. Wait, Emma grabbed his arm, then signed to Luca where everyone could see. Are you sure they're lying? Luca nodded emphatically. The big scary man practiced his words, like reading from a script. And there are more men outside. I saw them through the window. Emma's breath caught. She looked at Adrian, then at the door where Dante kept glancing. They're lying, Emma said clearly. This whole thing is a setup. They're trying to provoke you, and they have men positioned outside. This isn't a negotiation. It's an ambush. The room went silent. Carlo's smile froze. That's a serious accusation, Vincent said coldly. Based on what? Your intuition? Based on your son. Emma looked at Adrian. Luca's been watching them. He sees things we miss because we're too focused on the words. Adrian studied his son, then signed. What did you see? Luca's hands trembled, but he signed clearly. They're bad men doing bad things. Like Uncle Vincent. They want to hurt you. Adrian's expression went deadly calm. He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. Within seconds, his phone buzzed back. Marco just confirmed 6 armed men in the alley behind this restaurant, Adrian said quietly. Not our men. Yours, Carlo. Carlo's mask slipped. You're paranoid. You plan to kill me tonight. Make it look like a rival hit, then move in on my territory. While Vincent stepped up as the grieving consigliere, Adrian stood slowly. Did I miss anything? The tension exploded. Carlo's men reached for weapons, but Adrian's guards were faster. Guns appeared on both sides, the standoff instant and lethal. Nobody moves, Adrian commanded, or we all die here. Vincent was pale, realizing his conspiracy was unraveling. Emma pulled Luca close, shielding him with her body. You trusted a waitress over me, Vincent spat at Adrian. Over your own blood. I trusted my son, Adrian corrected. And the woman who actually sees him. Carlo slowly raised his hands. This is a misunderstanding. Get out. All of you, Adrian's voice was ice. And tell whoever sent you that if they come for my family again, I'll burn their entire organization to ash. The ride back to the mansion was silent except for Luca's quiet breathing as he slept against Emma's shoulder. Adrian stared out the window, jaw clenched, while his guards drove with military precision. Emma couldn't stop shaking. She'd just witnessed a near massacre, had watched men reach for guns, seen the cold calculation in Carlo Moretti's eyes as he'd planned murder. And somehow, impossibly, Luca's observations had saved them all. You did well tonight, Adrian said quietly, not looking at her. I was terrified.
Good.
Fear keeps you alive. Now he did turn, studying her in the dim light. But you didn't freeze. You trusted Luca, spoke up when it mattered. That took courage. Emma looked down at the sleeping boy in her arms. He's the brave one. I just listened. Most people don't even do that. Back at the mansion, Adrian carried Luca to bed while Emma stood in the foyer, suddenly aware of how much she didn't belong here. The marble, the gold fixtures, the priceless art. It was a world built on violence and power. A world where people plotted murders over dinner and children learned to spot assassins. What was she doing here? Mrs. Chen appeared with tea Emma didn't want. You should rest, dear. You've had quite a night. Mrs. Chen. How long have you worked for the Russos? The older woman paused. 23 years. Since before Adrian was born. And does it ever feel normal? The violence, the danger? Mrs. Chen's expression softened.
No.
It never feels normal. But you learn to see past it to what matters, the people you're protecting, the moments of peace between storms. She squeezed Emma's shoulder gently. That boy needs you. That's what's real. The rest is just noise. Emma couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., she found herself wandering the mansion's halls, still in the clothes from dinner. She ended up in the library where she'd first really talked with Luca, surrounded by books worth more than her entire life. Can't sleep either?
She jumped.
Adrian stood in the doorway in sweats and a t-shirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude, Emma said. This is your home now. You're not intruding. Adrian moved to the bar cart, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. He offered her one. It'll help. Emma took it, the whiskey burning her throat. I keep thinking about what Vincent said. About Rachel working with the Morettas. What if I brought danger to Luca? You didn't know. But I should have. I should have known Rachel was desperate enough to. Emma's voice broke. I'm so far out of my depth here, Adrian. I'm a waitress who knows sign language. That doesn't make me qualified to navigate mafia politics or spot conspiracies. You saved my life tonight. Luca saved your life. I just translated. Adrian moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet library. Do you want to leave? The question hung between them. Emma thought about her tiny apartment, her mounting debts, the ordinary struggles of an ordinary life. Then she thought about Luca's small hand in hers, his smile when she signed good morning, the way he'd started laughing again. I don't know what I want, she admitted. I'm scared all the time. Scared I'll mess up. Scared Vincent will find a way to hurt Luca through me. Scared that one day you'll realize I'm just not enough for this world. Emma. And I keep waiting, she continued, voice raw. Waiting for you to decide I'm more trouble than I'm worth. To send me away with a check and a non-disclosure agreement. Because that's what people like you do, right? When something stops being useful. Adrian's jaw tightened. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you, Emma met his eyes. You're terrifying and kind and dangerous and protective all at once. You've saved me from my problems but also trapped me in yours. I can't figure out if staying here is the best decision I've ever made or the worst. They stood in silence, the distance between them charged with unspoken things. I see my empire through different eyes now, Adrian said finally.
Yours.
Luca's. And I don't like everything I see, he set down his glass. You think you're not enough for this world. But the truth is, this world isn't enough for people like you. People who are genuinely good. I'm not. You are, Adrian's voice was firm. And that's why you don't belong here. Why you shouldn't stay. But I'm asking you to anyway, because my son needs you. Because you make him feel safe in a world that's tried to break him. Emma's eyes burned with unshed tears. What happens when I'm not enough? When just being kind and knowing sign language isn't enough to protect him from what's coming? Then we'll face it together. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like a chain settling around Emma's heart. The next morning, Emma woke to find Luca already in her room, sitting on the floor and drawing. He looked up when she stirred, signing, I had a bad dream. Can I stay? Of course, Emma sat beside him, looking at his drawing, the restaurant from last night, rendered in dark crayon strokes. The scary men wanted to hurt Dad, Luca signed. But you stopped them. You stopped them. You saw what I missed. Luca shook his head emphatically. You listened. Nobody else listens to me. Not the doctors, not the tutors Dad hired before. They talked at me. Not to me, his small hands moved with fierce certainty. You're the only one who listens. Please don't leave like everyone else. Emma pulled him close, feeling the weight of his need pressing down on her. How could she leave when this child had already lost so much? When her absence might send him spiraling back into that dark silence. But how could she stay in a world where people plotted murders and children witnessed violence? Through the window, she saw Adrian in the garden below, on the phone, his body language tense, making decisions that affected lives, territory, power. He looked up suddenly, as if sensing her watching, and their eyes met across the distance. In that moment, Emma understood. She was already too deep to leave. Whether it was the best or worst decision didn't matter anymore. She was bound to this family now, for better or worse. And somewhere in the mansion, Vincent Russo was plotting his revenge. The summit was held at the Bellevue Estate, a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Chicago that served as neutral ground for the city's most powerful families. Adrian had explained it to Emma that morning over breakfast. Twice a year, all the major players gathered to settle disputes, form alliances, and maintain the fragile peace that kept Chicago from descending into all-out war. "You're bringing me?" Emma had asked, incredulous. "And Luca," Adrian's tone left no room for argument. "After what happened with the Morettis, I want everyone to see that my family isn't hiding, that we're united." Now, standing in the grand ballroom surrounded by men in expensive suits and women dripping with diamonds, Emma felt like a fraud in the elegant black dress Adrian's stylist had provided. She didn't belong among these people who smiled with predators' teeth and spoke in coded language. Lucas stayed close to her side, small hand gripping hers. He wore a miniature suit that made Emma's heart ache, so young to be exposed to this world. Emma Hayes, a woman with steel-gray hair and cold eyes, approached. "So you're the waitress causing all the fuss. And you are?" "Sophia Castellano. I've known the Russo family for 30 years, her gaze raked over Emma with barely concealed contempt. "Tell me, dear, what exactly do you bring to Adrian's table besides sign language and naivete?" "I bring honesty," Emma said quietly. "Something I suspect is rare in this room." Sophia's laugh was sharp. "How refreshing. Let's see how long that innocence lasts." As she walked away, Emma noticed the pattern. People watching her with calculating eyes, whispered conversations stopping when she passed. She was the subject of every sidebar, every skeptical glance. Adrian worked the room with practiced ease, shaking hands and exchanging words with men who might order his death tomorrow. Vincent was always 2 steps behind, his expression carefully neutral, but Emma caught the way he leaned in to whisper to certain people, saw the glances that followed. He was planting seeds, building his case. The formal dinner was an exercise in tension. Emma sat beside Adrian at a long table, with Luca on her other side. Vincent sat across from them, flanked by Marco and 2 other Russo lieutenants Emma didn't recognize. Carlo Moretti was at the far end, his eyes occasionally finding Adrian with promises of violence. The failed assassination attempt hung over the room like smoke. Halfway through the meal, the host, an elderly don named Giuseppe Romano, stood and tapped his glass. "Gentlemen, ladies, we gather tonight to address concerns about the future of our families, our city." His voice carried the weight of decades of power. "Some believe the old ways are dying, that we've gone soft, that leadership has become compromised." Emma's stomach dropped. This was a setup. Giuseppe's eyes found Adrian. "There are questions about your recent decisions, Adrian. About your priorities." Adrian set down his fork with deliberate calm. "What questions?" "About whether a man controlled by sentiment can lead effectively," Giuseppe gestured vaguely. "You've brought your deaf son and his companion to business that doesn't concern them. You've made enemies by refusing to compromise when compromise was wise. Some say you're no longer thinking clearly." Vincent rose smoothly, and Emma saw it, the careful choreography of betrayal. "If I may speak," Vincent said, his voice carrying perfectly. "My brother has always been strong, but since his wife's death, he's been vulnerable. Grief makes us all weak." "Vincent," Adrian's voice was warning. "I say this out of love, Adrian." Vincent's eyes were cold despite his words. "But you've allowed a waitress with no experience, no credentials, to influence family decisions. You've brought your traumatized son into dangerous situations. You rejected a peace offering from the Morettis based on a child's intuition and a woman's word. That intuition revealed their assassination plot," Adrian said flatly. "Or perhaps," Vincent countered, looking at the other dons, "it created a convenient excuse to escalate tensions, to avoid compromise that might have benefited everyone at this table." Murmurs rippled through the room. Emma felt the mood shifting, saw doubt creeping into faces that had been neutral moments before. Adrian Russo used to be a man of strength, Vincent continued, his performance flawless. Now he's a father playing house with a waitress, pretending his broken son can advise on business matters. The Russo family deserves better. Careful, Vincent, Adrian said softly, dangerously. Tell them I'm wrong, Vincent spread his hands. Tell them you haven't let this woman influence your decisions. That you haven't chosen her word over your own blood, over advisors who've served this family for decades. Emma wanted to shrink, to disappear. Every eye in the room was on her now, judging, dismissing, seeing exactly what Vincent wanted them to see. A nobody who'd somehow gotten above her station. The question, Vincent said, addressing the table, is whether Adrian Russo is still fit to lead, or whether his grief and desperation have made him weak, a liability to us all. Giuseppe nodded slowly. These are serious concerns. Adrian, perhaps you'd like to address them? But before Adrian could speak, Carlo Moretti stood. I agree with Vincent, Carlo said smoothly. Adrian's judgment is compromised. He risks all our agreements, all our carefully maintained peace, because he's let sentiment cloud reason. He paused for effect. I propose Adrian prove his strength. Demonstrate that he can still make the hard choices leadership requires. What kind of proof? Adrian's voice was ice. Send them away. Carlo gestured to Emma and Luca. Your son and his keeper. If you can prioritize business over family, if you can make the logical choice instead of the emotional one, perhaps we can trust your leadership. The room held its breath. Emma felt Luca trembling beside her. She wanted to sign comfort to him, but didn't dare move. This was the moment Vincent had been building toward, force Adrian to choose between his son and his empire. Adrian stood slowly, his presence commanding despite the trap closing around him. You want me to prove my strength, he said quietly, by abandoning my son, by sending away the one person who's helped him heal. We want you to prove you can still lead, Vincent said, that you haven't gone soft. Under the table, Luca's small hand found Emma's. His fingers moved in rapid signs against her palm, too fast and frantic for her to fully understand. But she caught fragments: danger, bad men, now uncle, betrayal. Emma's blood froze. She looked at Luca's face, pale, eyes wide with terror, and understood. This wasn't just about humiliating Adrian. The assassination attempt wasn't over. It was happening right now. Luca's fingers moved with desperate speed against Emma's palm, spelling out words in the tactile alphabet they'd been practicing. Not just signing, communicating directly, hidden from view. Emma's heart stopped. She looked at Luca's face, pale, sweat beading on his forehead, eyes locked on something across the room. She followed his gaze. Vincent's two lieutenants had shifted position. Their hands were inside their jackets. Marco stood by the door, blocking the main exit. And there, three waiters who weren't serving anyone, standing at strategic points around the ballroom, their posture wrong. Too military. This wasn't a debate about leadership. It was a coup. And they were about to execute it with witnesses who'd been carefully primed to believe Adrian was weak, unstable, compromised. Emma's mind raced. If she stayed silent, Vincent would strike. Adrian would die, probably her, and Luca too. Vincent would step up as the grieving brother, take control of the Russo empire with the blessing of everyone in this room. But if she spoke up and was wrong, she'd look paranoid. Prove Vincent's point about her being a bad influence. Luca's hand squeezed hers painfully. He pointed with his other hand, subtle but clear, at Vincent's jacket pocket. Emma saw the bulge there, too square to be a phone. Too angular. A gun. Stop. Emma's voice cut through the room like a gunshot. Everyone turned to stare at her. Adrian's eyes widened in surprise. Vincent's expression flickered, just for a second, with cold fury before smoothing back to concern. Emma, what? Adrian started. It's a trap. Emma stood, pulling Luca up with her. Vincent's going to kill you.
Right now.
Right here. The room exploded into chaos. Some people laughed, the absurdity of it. Others looked nervous. Carlo Moretti leaned back with an amused smile, like watching dinner theater. "This is exactly what I mean," Vincent said smoothly, gesturing at Emma. "Paranoid accusations, disrupting serious business." "Your men have guns," Emma said, voice shaking but firm. "The two behind you, Marco at the door, and the 3 fake waiters positioned around the room. Luca saw them. He's been watching all night." Vincent's mask cracked. "You're going to trust the word of a deaf child and a hysterical." "Show them your jacket," Adrian said quietly. He'd gone very still, very cold. "Your right pocket, Vincent. Show everyone what's in it." Vincent's hand moved to his pocket, whether to show it or reach for the gun. Emma never knew. Because Luca did something extraordinary. The boy who hadn't made a sound in 8 months opened his mouth and screamed. "Gun?" His voice was rusty, too loud, the words slightly slurred from months of silence. But it was unmistakable.
Clear. Real.
And chaos erupted. Vincent's hand went into his jacket. Adrian lunged across the table. The fake waiters reached for weapons. And suddenly the ballroom was full of guns, guards for different families drawing on each other, guests screaming and diving for cover. Emma threw herself over Luca, dragging him under the table as gunfire cracked overhead. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. The crystal chandelier swayed violently. "Stay down," Adrian's voice, somewhere above them. Emma heard grunts of impact, flesh hitting flesh. She peeked out and saw Adrian and Vincent locked in combat, both reaching for Vincent's gun. One of Vincent's lieutenants aimed at Adrian's back and crumpled as Marco shot him. Marco, who Emma had thought was Vincent's man, had just saved Adrian. "I knew," Marco shouted over the chaos. "Vincent approached me last week, tried to recruit me. I told Adrian yesterday." More of Adrian's guards poured in from side doors. Vincent's supporters found themselves outnumbered, outmaneuvered. This wasn't the surgical strike Vincent had planned, it was a bloodbath he was losing. Vincent threw Adrian off, finally pulling his gun free. He aimed at his brother's head, finger tightening on the trigger. A champagne bottle smashed across his skull. Vincent dropped like a stone. Mrs. Chen stood over him, holding the broken bottle, her expression fierce. 23 years I've worked for this family," she said to Vincent's unconscious form. "And you tried to hurt that child." Emma stared. Mrs. Chun, proper, stern Mrs. Chun, had just taken out a Mafia boss with a bottle of Dom Perignon. The gunfire stopped. Vincent's supporters were disarmed, on their knees, Adrian's guards holding them at gunpoint. The other Dons remained frozen at the table, hands visible, clearly wanting no part of this internal Russo drama. Adrian stood slowly, breathing hard, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding down his face. He looked around the room, at the shocked witnesses, at his brother unconscious on the floor. "Giuseppe," Adrian said to the elderly Don, "I believe you had questions about my leadership." Giuseppe Romano looked at the subdued coup, at the efficiency with which Adrian's men had handled it, at Vincent's body being zip-tied by Marco. He started to laugh, a wheezing, genuine sound. "I think you've answered them quite thoroughly," Giuseppe raised his glass. "To Adrian Russo, who, it seems, is not soft after all." The other Dons slowly joined the toast, clearly reevaluating their positions. Carlo Moretti looked murderous. His ally Vincent had failed spectacularly. Emma crawled out from under the table with Luca. The boy was shaking, pressed against her side. But when Adrian knelt down to them, Luca signed with trembling hands. "I talked. Did you hear me? I talked." "I heard you." Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. He pulled Luca into a fierce hug. "You saved me. Both of you saved me." Over Luca's head, Adrian's eyes met Emma's. In them she saw gratitude, wonder, and something else, something that made her chest tighten with feelings she didn't dare name. Vincent groaned, starting to wake. Adrian stood, his expression going cold. "Take him to the secure room," Adrian ordered Marco, "and call a meeting of the family council. We have some decisions to make." As Vincent was dragged away, still dazed, he locked eyes with Emma. The hatred there was pure and absolute. This wasn't over. But for tonight, they'd won. Luca tugged Emma's hand, signing, "Can we go home now? I don't like it here." Emma signed back, "Yes. Let's go home." And realized, with a start, that she'd meant it. The mansion wasn't just Adrian's home anymore. Somehow, impossibly, it had become hers too. The secure room was in the mansion's basement, windowless, soundproof, built for exactly this kind of family business. Emma had put Luca to bed hours ago, but sleep was impossible. At 3 a.m., she found herself pacing the library, waiting. When Adrian finally appeared, he looked exhausted. Blood stained his shirt collar, bruises darkening along his jaw. But his eyes were clear, determined. "It's done," he said quietly. "What's done?" "The family council voted. Vincent is out."
Permanently.
Emma sank into a chair. "What does that mean?"
Out.
"Exile. He leaves Chicago tonight with enough money to start somewhere else. But he's stripped of his position, his authority, his connection to this family." Adrian poured himself a drink with shaking hands. "My own brother tried to kill me in a room full of witnesses. There's no coming back from that. Adrian, he's waiting downstairs. Demanded to speak to me one last time before he leaves." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I told him you'd be there too." "Why?" "Because he needs to understand." Adrian met her eyes. "And I need you to hear what I say to him." Vincent sat in a chair in the secure room, hands zip-tied in front of him despite the guards flanking the door. His face was bruised, lips split, but his eyes burned with undiminished hatred. "So you're exiling me," Vincent said as Adrian entered with Emma. "Your own blood. For her." "I'm exiling you for trying to murder me," Adrian corrected coldly. "For terrorizing my son. For plotting with the Morettas. Emma has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with it." Vincent surged against his restraints. "You were strong before her. Focused. You understood what needed to be done. Then this waitress shows up, and suddenly you're soft. Making decisions based on feelings instead of strategy." "I was dying before her," Adrian said quietly. "I just didn't know it." Vincent laughed bitterly. "Dying? You were building an empire." "I was losing my son." Adrian's voice sharpened. "Every day, he slipped further away. And I was so consumed with power, with maintaining control, that I didn't even notice. I would have sacrificed him for this empire, without even realizing it. That's what leadership requires. Sacrifice. Not that sacrifice. Never that." Adrian moved closer to his brother. "You want to know what Emma brought to my life? She showed me that strength isn't just about control. It's about knowing what matters. And my son matters more than any territory, any deal, any alliance." "You'll lose everything for this waitress," Vincent sneered. "The other families will see you as weak. They'll challenge you, test you. Everything we built, everything father built, will crumble because you chose sentiment over sense." Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was absolute.
No.
"I nearly lost everything before her. I was so focused on the empire that I forgot what I was building it for. Emma didn't make me weak. She reminded me what strength actually means." "She's changed you," Vincent spat. "Yes," Adrian agreed simply. "And thank God for that." Vincent turned his hate-filled gaze to Emma. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're proud." "I saved your nephew," Emma said quietly. "From you. From the isolation and fear you put him in. If that destroyed something, maybe it needed to be destroyed. Luca needed to be toughened up. Luca needed to be loved." Adrian's control finally cracked. "He's 8 years old, Vincent."
8.
"He watched his mother die, lost his hearing, and instead of helping him heal, you tortured him with threats and manipulation. You made him afraid of his own father. I was preparing him for this life. You were breaking him." Adrian's voice echoed off the concrete walls. "And I was so blind with grief that I let you." But Emma saw it. She saw my son when the rest of us had given up on him. Vincent's expression twisted with something ugly. "So that's it? You choose her over blood? Over family?" "She is family now," Adrian's words fell like stones. She's done more for Luca in 2 weeks than you did in 8 months. She's earned her place here. You've lost yours. The council will turn on you. The council voted unanimously to exile you. Adrian crouched down, meeting Vincent's eyes. Because they saw tonight that you're not just a threat to me. You're a threat to stability. You allied with our enemies, put everyone in that room at risk, and failed spectacularly. Nobody wants you here anymore, Vincent. Not even your own supporters. Vincent slumped, the fight draining out of him. For a moment, he looked old, tired, defeated. Father would be ashamed of you, he said hoarsely. Father would be ashamed of both of us, Adrian said. But I'm trying to do better. You're not. Adrian stood, nodding to the guards. Take him to the airport. Make sure he leaves the country. If he ever sets foot in Chicago again, we handle it permanently. As the guards hauled Vincent to his feet, he looked at Emma one last time. This isn't over, Waitress. Exile doesn't mean death. One day, I'll come back. And you'll regret every moment you spent in my family. She's in my family, Adrian corrected. You don't have one anymore. Vincent was dragged out, still cursing, still threatening. But his words felt hollow now.
Desperate.
When the door closed, Emma let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her whole body trembled with adrenaline crash. Are you okay? Adrian asked gently. I don't know, Emma looked at him. You really meant it? That I'm family? Did you think I was lying? I thought you were just saying what Vincent needed to hear. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. That when he was gone, you'd realize I'm still just
me.
A waitress who got in over her head. Adrian moved closer, and Emma was struck again by how he could be both dangerous and gentle, both terrifying and comforting. You're not just anything, he said firmly. You're the woman who saved my son, who saved me, who stood in a room full of killers and exposed a conspiracy because it was the right thing to do. His hand found hers, warm and solid. Vincent was wrong about a lot of things, but he was right about one. You've changed me, changed this family, and I wouldn't go back for anything. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. What happens now?
Now.
Adrian almost smiled. Now we go upstairs, check on Luca, and try to build something better than what came before. That simple? That complicated, Adrian corrected. But we'll figure it out. Together. Together. The word settled around Emma's heart like a promise. She squeezed his hand and let him lead her out of the darkness, back toward the light. 2 days after Vincent's exile, Adrian called a full council meeting. Emma tried to beg off. These meetings were for family business, not for her, but Adrian insisted. You need to be there, was all he'd say. Mrs. Chun helped her dress in a deep blue dress that actually fit, did her hair in a way that made her look older, more confident. Emma barely recognized herself in the mirror. You look like you belong, Mrs. Chun said approvingly. Emma wasn't so sure. The council room was full when she arrived with Luca. 30 people, family members, lieutenants, advisors, all seated around an enormous table. Marco was there, promoted to consigliera in Vincent's place. The faces that had sneered at her weeks ago now watched with careful neutrality. Adrian stood at the head of the table, commanding the space effortlessly. When Emma tried to sit in a chair along the wall, he gestured to the seat beside him.
Here, he said.
Not a request. Emma sat, acutely aware of every eye tracking her movement. Luca climbed into her lap, signing. Why are we here? I don't know, Emma admitted. Adrian called the meeting to order with a sharp rap on the table. We've spent the last 48 hours dealing with the aftermath of Vincent's betrayal. The other families have been receptive to our explanations. Carlo Moretti has backed down from his territorial disputes. The council has voted Marco in as my new consigliera. He paused, looking around the room. But there's one piece of business left unfinished. He turned to Emma, and her stomach dropped. 2 weeks ago, I brought a stranger into this family. A waitress with no connections, no credentials, nothing that would traditionally qualify her for a place in our world. Adrian's voice carried through the room. Many of you questioned that decision. Some openly, some privately. Emma wanted to disappear. This was it, the moment he'd thank her for her service and send her on her way. You were right to question it, Adrian continued. I made that decision emotionally, desperately. My son was unreachable, and this woman somehow broke through. I acted on instinct, not strategy. Emma's chest tightened. She felt Luca stiffen in her lap. But over the past 2 weeks, Adrian said, his voice strengthening, Emma Hayes has proven that sometimes instinct is smarter than strategy. She exposed Vincent's manipulation of Luca. She identified the Moretti assassination plot. She stood in front of this council and other families and spoke truth when silence would have been safer. He moved around the table, stopping beside Emma's chair. She saved my son. And in doing so, she saved me. Adrian's hand rested on Luca's shoulder. I was so lost in grief and power that I'd forgotten what mattered.
Emma reminded me.
Not through grand gestures or manipulation, just by seeing my son as a person worth listening to. Emma's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. So I'm making this official, Adrian said, addressing the full council. Emma Hayes is under the protection of this family. Anyone who threatens her threatens us all. She is Luca's guardian, his companion, his advocate. And she has a permanent place in this household, if she wants it. Silence filled the room. Emma felt the weight of 30 people processing this declaration, calculating what it meant. Marco stood first. I support this decision. He looked at Emma with unexpected warmth. She's earned it. One by one, others stood. Some genuinely, others politically. But within a minute, the entire council was on their feet in acknowledgement. Emma couldn't speak.
Couldn't breathe.
Then Luca squirmed out of her lap and stood on his chair, so he was at eye level with the room. His small hands moved in signs everyone had learned to recognize over the past weeks. Stay, he signed. He looked at Emma with those dark, serious eyes, so much older than 8 years should allow. And then, his voice rusty but clear, trembling with effort and emotion, he spoke the word aloud. Stay. The single syllable cracked something open inside Emma. All the fear, the doubt, the feeling of not belonging, it crashed over her in a wave. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she pulled Luca into her arms. I'll stay, she whispered against his hair. I promise. I'll stay. Luca wrapped his arms around her neck and spoke again, the words slow but deliberate. Love you. Emma broke completely, sobbing into this little boy's shoulder while an entire room of hardened criminals watched. She didn't care. Let them see. Let them know that this strange, impossible family meant everything to her now. When she finally looked up, Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, soft, wondering, grateful. Thank you, he mouthed. That evening, Emma found Adrian on the terrace overlooking the gardens. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and orange. Are you sure about this? She asked, joining him at the railing. Making it official? There's still time to change your mind. I don't change my mind. Adrian glanced at her. Do you want to leave? No, Emma surprised herself with how certain she sounded. A month ago, I would have run. This world terrified me. It still does sometimes. But Luca, she smiled. He needs me. And I need him too. I didn't realize how lost I was until I had someone to protect. You've changed, Adrian observed. So have you. They stood in comfortable silence as darkness crept across the grounds. Emma thought about the girl who'd walked into Sal's diner 2 weeks ago, invisible, drowning, convinced she had to handle everything alone. She wasn't that girl anymore. Emma, Adrian said quietly, I meant what I said. About you saving us. We saved each other, Emma corrected. That's what families do. Family. The word no longer felt foreign. It felt like home. Inside, she heard Luca calling for her in his still new, still rusty voice. Emma. Story time. She grinned at Adrian. Duty calls. As she turned to go, Adrian caught her hand. For what it's worth, I'm glad you walked into that diner. So am I, Emma said. So am I. She went inside to read to Luca, to this little boy who'd chosen her when he had every reason to trust no one. And for the first time since her mother died, since Jeremy's diagnosis, since the weight of the world settled on her 24-year-old shoulders, Emma felt something she'd almost forgotten.
Peace.
She wasn't a waitress anymore. Wasn't invisible. Wasn't drowning. Wasn't alone. She was Emma Hayes, guardian, protector, and part of something bigger than herself. She was home.